People should not be finding starter homes for themselves to live in anymore. You should instead find starting investment properties.
Is there a case to be made that paying rent to a landlord is kind of just a waste of money?
You can retire off of just one property. That's the crazy thing.
Oh, let me invite you to my comments, my friend.
Should you buy a starter home or hold out a little bit and invest in your first rental property first? For a long time, I thought the answer was pretty simple. I thought it was buy a starter home. But I've got to admit, after talking it through with my good friend Kai Andrew, I'm questioning that thought a little bit. And to be honest, I think you might too. On today's episode of Raw Built, we're gonna cover that. We're gonna cover house hacking. We're gonna talk about how one rental property can financially set you up for life. And we're also gonna talk about how to make multiple streams of income off of one property. Today is a good one. It's a good one. Pretty good. Pretty good. Oh, and by the way, today's episode is brought to you by Baselane, but a little bit more on them later. Let's hop in.
All right, I'm working on this new hypothesis where people should not be finding starter homes for themselves to live in anymore. You should instead find starting investment properties. That way you don't have a liability, but you have more of an asset, and then that builds and compounds over time. Essentially going back to what we talked last time about starting that investment clock.
Okay, so you're basically a proponent of, hey, don't buy yourself a property to live in, buy yourself a property that's going to make you money?
In short, yes, with a caveat. If you can live on that investment property, that's even better. You're double dipping now. But yes, if you still need to rent or you need to live at home with the folks or whatever, I believe it's better to buy a true asset, an investment property, than to buy your first liability in a starter home.
Interesting. Okay. I initially was going to fire back at you and be like, get out of here. But if you get to live in the property, then I guess that makes it somewhat of a house hack, huh?
Yeah. House hack, land hack.
Okay. So let's dive into this because you've piqued my interest, sir. Why are you so anti the hardworking American buying a house to live in?
Actually, I'm going to get America, man. No. It's not that. I think what happened is, I think most folks and Americans can see it right now. Interest rates are high. There's a housing crisis in nearly every major city. Lack of homes, lack of developers and builders, and just prices, as we all know, are going through the roof. And what that means is I don't want anybody to get the idea that when you're buying your first home, it's an investment. Nothing is an investment unless it's making you money. And so even when you buy a home, and we can talk about equity and appreciation later on, it's not an investment. Hopefully it goes up. Maybe, most likely it will go up, but we're not guaranteed that. But if you can, when you're going into markets such as it is now, with high interest and high cost, if we can find an asset that cash flows, that's going to be better for you in the long term than trying to put yourself into a quote unquote starter home and getting yourself into more debt.
I think that's an interesting case. You know, if it makes you cash flow, cool. It is technically an asset. So let's contextualize it a little bit. Give me a little bit of, give me the counter argument, or not the counter argument. Give me the argument against buying a house to live in as a primary. What is the cause for concern, or what is the cause for kind of maybe asking someone to consider a different strategy?
Yeah. So what was it? I think I saw a recent, I'm sure we can pull this up in post. So I'm not going to remember the number exactly off the top of my head, but I believe that there is right now, they did a study of the average American, how much the average, or maybe it was median, one of the two, median percent of their income is going towards owning a home in the United States. And it was somewhere around like 40%, which is the highest since the Great Recession. And the previous highest before that was right before another crash back in I want to say the 1980s. And once we break that mark of 40% of your income is going just to your housing expense, or you're paying your mortgage, it means that you're overloaded. You're overloaded in debt. And so what happens, and what I'm concerned about here, is that people are getting and buying their first homes. And what they're doing is that they are taking a substantial amount of money and they're just paying down the mortgage. Granted, they get to live there, but it's not producing anything for them. They are now working a corporate job or their day job just to pay down this loan for them to live in. Whereas, as you know, is having multiple income streams into your bank account, especially the younger you are, the better off it is in the long run. And so we can start that sooner. That's what we're trying to do. It's trying to avoid this because it's so expensive right now. I mean, you know this. It's even difficult for folks like you and I who are investing in properties. Imagine a 21, 22-year-old just graduating college. They get a 7.5%, 8% interest rate on a $450,000 home.
Yeah. Impossible.
Dude.
Yeah, impossible to do. Especially if you're like me and you have a beautiful starting salary of $40,000 a year.
I think I got you beat. I started at $36,000.
Nice. Well, my first job was $33,000.
Oh, okay.
But I got fired from it very quickly. The next job was $40,000.
Wait, why'd you get fired?
Because I sucked.
How old were you?
Oh, I mean, I was out of college, so like 22. I'm a bad employee, man. Semi-okay self-operator, but I never was good at working for other people. I wasn't good at structure. This isn't about me. Let's get back.
I like that you shared all that as we partnered up.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you know I'm a hard worker because I'm a self-starter for myself.
Oh, okay.
I like writing my own paychecks. How about that?
Okay, fair enough.
I want to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, Baselane. Look, whether you want to buy your first investment property or your first primary residence that you're going to house hack, what's really important for an investor that's just getting started or even starting to scale is cash flow management. It took me way too long to track my expenses as a newbie investor. I would find that money would come in, but it would also leave just as quickly. So that's why it's handy to have a financial and banking platform like Baselane to help you track all of that. With Baselane, you can create as many bank accounts as you want associated with specific properties. You can categorize every single expense associated with that property and run all of your bookkeeping through the Baselane platform, which solves, I think, the biggest pain point for all investors. And you can just have a clear financial snapshot of how your properties are performing. And you can also earn some pretty juicy interest on your checking account because their banking accounts have a pretty healthy APY associated with them. And remember how I said you can create as many bank accounts as you want? You can also create virtual debit cards for every single property, so you can have specific cards for specific properties. And if you're a long-term investor, you can even do rent collection through Baselane too, which honestly comes in handy for a house hack because you don't want to have to like go to your roommate and be like, hey bro, can you pay me my money? That's just awkward. You can automate all of that communication and so much more with Baselane. I'm a user myself, by the way. I like the platform, and if you want to learn more, click the link in my description down below, and you'll even get a little bonus for doing so when you click my link down below. Okay, that's it. Go sign up. You'll like them. Back to the video.
Let me ask you this, because if someone is buying a starter investment property, is there a case to be made or something to consider that paying rent to a landlord is kind of just a waste of money? And I mean, that's the counter argument here. You're saying, hey, don't buy a house that you can live in where you can build equity. That's not as important as buying a investment property that can make you money. But I can't help but think that the counter of that is that, the flip side is you are paying a landlord in that instance.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good point. If you're living somewhere like in an expensive area like LA, San Francisco, New York, Austin, and you're paying $3,500 for rent, yes, you're absolutely correct. It's a difficult thing to convince somebody to do if you're paying that much. In the beginning, though, what I would say for most folks, this is for starter folks. This isn't if you have like 5 homes, you have established career or whatever. It's not for those folks. But if you're starting off, ideally you're living with roommates and you're living within your means. And so rent is typically going to be far less expensive. So in the case of, I'm sure for you, but for me, when I was 20, 21 years old, I was living with roommates. And so what ends up happening if you're renting, instead of paying that $3,500, you should, for most folks, even in major cities, your rent should be under $1,000, if not under $800 a month. Now, if you can
cue up the keyboard warriors on that. There's nowhere where that's possible.
I mean, please do. I mean, I think you and I, outside of some very specific markets, if you can, even if rent is, let me just pick 2 very expensive cities, Portland and Seattle. Okay, 2 cities I know very well. You can go get a 3-bedroom home, single family home in any of those cities right now for around probably $3,000 to $4,000. This is fairly nice, right?
To rent, right?
To rent. Okay. If you have 2 roommates in there, possibly 3 if you have a bonus room or a 4th bedroom, you're all looking at rents under $1,000 or $800. That's in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. Now, when I was growing up, I didn't get to go to the nice neighborhoods or the nice houses. So my rent, and don't just say like, oh, you grew up at a different time period. You guys got to remember, we were growing up, Rob, or actually probably more me. I was growing up at the peak before 2007, 2008. Our rents, my rents were under $500. There were certain homes that I lived in, apartments I lived in, that was under $300. Now, I was able to stash a lot of my money because I was renting and I was living way below my means. Now, I also had my folks to help me out too, so I was able to live with my folks rent free, which is also very nice. But I think that's a better strategy for folks if they can sacrifice a little bit when they're starting off, and then they can actually put that money into something like what you just brought up earlier, Rob, is beautiful, is if you can buy a house and people think they're investing because the appreciation is going up is one thing. Now imagine you buying a starter investment property where appreciation is going up as well as cash flows. And then like still pay.
Yeah, the 3 to 5% every year in a perfect world.
Yeah, exactly. You get that, but then you also are getting the cash flow, which I think that we're going to be getting to in a little bit, because you can retire off of just one property. That's the crazy thing.
Okay. That's my spidey my guru senses are tingling. Okay, so right.
So okay, so maybe
break it down.
Let me break it down. So it's called hopscotching, or it's called the onion method that we talked about last week. But essentially, it might not be your first property unless you have some really great parents or great connections, or you're starting off with a lot of money, which most of us, when we're first starting, we just don't have. But what I'm getting to is that we want to find the smartest properties to invest in. And if we can do that, that one property can outproduce anything else in our portfolio, sometimes magnitudes of 10 to 20 to even 30 doors. So one rental property can outproduce 10, 20, or 30 doors. And we've proven it over and over again, and you've been doing this too yourself.
Yeah, so I guess the misconception, well, I mean, it's not a misconception. I guess it is true. But I think the common, the common downfall of a lot of Airbnb hosts is scale, buy property. This is actually my demise that, as you know, I'm actually looking to offload almost everything and consolidate into one property.
Yeah.
So what's the ideal? What's the idea here? I don't know why I said it that way. What's the idea here? Is the idea to really pour in your time and effort into like literally one door, one property?
Yeah. So it's and I'm not it's the pot calling the kettle black here, but you understand this, is that when it comes to real estate investing, it all boils down to finding the right piece of property to create the right income streams. Doesn't matter what kind of real estate you're trying to get into. That's all it is. Right property, right income streams. And so if you can find the right piece of property to generate multiple income streams, now what you're doing is exactly what you said. The scalability is so much easier. Instead of owning, I don't know why, and I think I've heard you say this in a podcast, I think it's a vanity metric to say like, hey, I own 40 doors, 50 doors, 1,000 doors, whatever it is. I'm like, I don't care about how many doors you have. How much are you actually cash flowing? And then what's your equity in those doors, right? And then also the other thing that a lot of people don't, people like to think about how much money we're making or how much money they're making, and they forget about like their lifestyle. And I can tell you, after managing several doors, dozens of doors, I can tell you life's a lot easier when you have 3, 4, or 5 doors that generate you the same amount as 40 doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my thing. Like, I have been trying to be as responsible of an educator in the short-term rental space for like as I can, always. But like in the last year and a half, my message has been very clear, and my message is stop buying properties. Stop buying properties and focus on the properties you have. Squeeze as much juice out of those properties as possible.
Yeah.
And then if you can maximize the revenue as much as possible, I will then allow you to go buy another property. And this isn't something I've just been preaching. It's something I've been doing. I have launched, because I've had some of these properties already, but like, for example, my primary property in Houston, Texas, I lived in it for the 3 years that I've been here in Houston. I just turned that into an Airbnb because I just moved into this house that I've been building for the past couple of years. And that property is fully maximized. Funkit killed it. They did the whole works, backyard amenities. We turned the garage into a speakeasy. It's Palm Springs themed. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. And that property on average, after all of my expenses, it's averaging $11,500 to $12,500 a month. It's been booked at 100% occupancy because I have a midterm rental guest in there until basically the May 1st.
Nice.
At the time of this podcast, it's February. They've been in there for a month already. My profit after all expenses, everything, is between $4,000 to $5,000 a month net profit. That is $48,000 to $60,000 a year off of one property. More than my starting salary of $40,000, right?
Yeah.
And I compare the level of effort in managing that property to some of my other base hits where I'm making like $1,000. I think we were just talking before the podcast. You're like, how much does it make? I was like, oh, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 a month.
Right.
Not bad money, but dude, comparatively, it's the same amount of work. And I'm literally making $50,000 on one property. So I'm like, why don't I just have like 5 of those little cuties and get rid of the other like 35 doors?
Yeah.
My life would be so much easier.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely correct. And I think you've done such a good job with designing, especially with Funkit Studios and everything. You really build out a really good experience. I think that's why you're seeing that 100% or just that $5,000, $6,000, what do you say, $6,000, $7,000 a month net?
$4,000 or $5,000.
$4,000 or $5,000 net. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I have another property, not as impressive, but that one was a $400,000 seller finance property 2 minutes away from that house. And that one's doing about $6,000 a month or so. And then my mortgage is $1,900. So after all expenses, I'm making about $2,000 to $2,500, which isn't as juicy, but $2,000 to $2,500 is a hell of a lot juicier than $1,000 a month. Like I think for me, I have found that threshold. If I can be like to that $2,000 to $5,000 per property, that's life-changing money. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you think about it. If you really have 5 properties, I know you did a podcast about this. You have 5 properties averaging $4,000 a month net.
Yeah.
You got $20,000 a month. That's $250,000 a year.
$250,000 a year, man.
Right?
Yeah,
what's the median income in the United States right now? 50,000, 55,000?
Yeah, something like that. 50, 55, yeah, somewhere in there. I did a video on this. It's between 50 to 60. I couldn't really find the definitive number, but yeah.
I think you and I talked about this a lot too. So I'm at one of my properties. I'm at my shipping container property. This is actually the very first shipping container home I created. So I'm actually in this space right now. So this one I built out for $18,000 and it spit off about $35,000 to $40,000 in revenues per year for me for the last 6-7 years. So you had mentioned in a previous podcast that you could retire with just five properties. And, you know, and when we start investing, we're taught or we think that we need to hold so many doors to make that money, which is true with long-term rentals. But the more that we've done it, and I've told you this, and I've shared this with you, is that I've actually liquidated a large portion of my portfolio. One, it was due to landlord-tenant laws I just want to get out of. But also I found that I didn't want to be working so hard across so many doors. And so I've consolidated mine down to less than 10 doors. And actually, if I really think about it, I think we're consolidating down to like 8 doors, and then we're going to grow back up to 10. But it's only across like four properties, right? So it's more consolidated, but we're making more money. So just to get like, then when I was using the shipping containers as an example, like this one, $18,000 cost me to build. So let's say after I furnished it, artwork and everything, it was like, let's say it's $25,000. Every single year it spit out, my net was about $32,000 to $35,000 off this single container home. That cost me $18,000 to build, right? That's just coming in. And then this property, I have I have 4 other doors on this property. Well, actually, sorry, technically 3 doors, because I've converted this into a studio. So they each can generate me tons of income.
Hey, really fast. If you're a fan of today's discussion and the idea of short-term rentals appeal to you, or developing a property into multiple short-term rentals that can provide multiple streams of income for you, Kai and I are the owners of Host Camp. We teach thousands of people on a daily basis how to invest in real estate, how to find profitable short-term rentals, how to develop unique stays from the ground up, and how to use all of those strategies to achieve financial freedom. So if you want to learn more about Host Camp, then you should totally book a call with our team, and spoiler alert, you'll probably be talking to Kai. Okay, click that link down below. Back to the video.
Wow. Okay, so when you say you have 8 doors or so, no, you have 4 properties and 8 doors. Are you basically averaging out? You have like 2 forms of income off of every single property. Yeah. And how does that work? Do you is it like literally rental income for both, or do you make other random types of income, like, I don't know?
Yeah, when I first started,
farm fresh eggs.
I was thinking about doing that, but I think that's too much work for how much we travel. No, this property, if you watch my older videos, like probably 3-4 years ago when I first started, no, even longer than that. I'm sorry, maybe 6-7 years ago. This is actually a property with a lavender farm and bamboo here too. So each year we have a lot of very mature bamboo, so we sell those off. So people can come and dig it up, and they just take these bamboo, and it's actually really profitable because they can come and dig it, or we dig it out. We put it in a potter or a planter pot, and we can sell those off anywhere between like $30 for the younger ones all the way up to like $150, $200 for the more mature ones. And then the lavender, we used to sell them at the local farmers market. We haven't done that for a couple of years, to be honest. It's just more work. And so what we do is we let our guests come out there and they get to trim it. But we have about, I think 150, 175 lavender plants on this property here. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 bamboo groves here.
So let me ask you this. Is it that you make enough money to where it's not worth your time and effort to go out and like harvest that, but maybe at a younger point in your life where every dollar did matter,
yeah,
it was worth it for you at a different time in your life?
100%. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So at that point in time when I first got started, I got this property back in 2014. You hit on the head, is that, it was like, hey, if I can make an extra $35,000 a year net, that'd be phenomenal. If I can make another $12,000 from bamboo, I can make another $7,000 from lavender. Dude, I'm sitting like super cushy, right?
Oh, that's a lot of money. I thought you were talking like $200 here and there, like $500 a month max.
No. Yeah. If seasonally, bamboo make between, depending on this year, 8 to 10,000, maybe 12,000 in a really good month or a really good season. And then lavender, yeah, you can get a couple $1,000s from that. And then obviously the container and everything.
Wow. Okay. So when you're talking about multiple streams of income, is that what you mean though? Like just anything, or is this topic or this kind of philosophy really based more on rental income on your property?
Rental income is by far the best. I'll say that. There's strategies that we've talked about, because this one, the reason why I like to do this is because I get tax deferment or tax exemptions, because I am technically harvesting, or I'm farming on the property. So I don't have to pay taxes, property taxes on it. But just down the road from me, there's pumpkin farms, there's Christmas tree farms, and there's a mint farm a couple miles away from me that does it with their short-term rental. Sorry, I'll say that again because I know it's not a good word on YouTube right now. There's a mint farm just down the road from me that just completely
annihilates.
I'm not sure that's a good word either. That does really, really well with their little cabin that overlooks the mint farm. And so it's a great, what do you call it? I hate the term synergy, but it's a great complement to Airbnb. So when you come here, like we're putting in like this really cool cedar hot tub out here that is literally in the middle of this bamboo grove. So you can sit there, you look straight up, you see stars, and you're completely surrounded by bamboo. And then on the other side, you've got a lavender field. And so I'm trying to find businesses that complement each other. And then when I built out this property, I was thinking of a lavender bamboo farm with an amazing container home experience. And you just happen to make money off all of those. But there's several different ways of making money. But if we can do that off of 4, 5, 6, 7 income streams, you really need only one wise property to basically replace your day job, especially if your day job is producing $55,000, $60,000 a year.
Completely agree. I've done this on a smaller scale, and it's very like it's a compounding return when you nail it. I've got my property in Los Angeles. That was a house that was above some kind of studio. I think it was like a basement or crawl space at one point, but the previous owner converted that into a bonus room. And then when I moved in, I remodeled it and made it nice-ish. I've actually gone in the last couple of months and remodeled it again. But needless to say, that's a form of income stream on that property. The main house is a form of income on that property. And then I built my tiny house, which is an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. So I had 3 forms of income on that property. And now I'm going to remodel the main house. So my whole strategy and grand plan is on pause for now. But it was an amazing opportunity when I lived there, because I lived in the main home. I made $1,700 to $3,000 a month with that studio underneath on my best months. And then that tiny house in the back, I made $2,000 to $3,000, sometimes more. So just those 2 alone covered my mortgage while I was living in that main house. Now, granted, I wasn't cash flowing by the way that you're talking about, But in a way, I kind of was. I kind of consider any way to get my mortgage down to zero through subsidizing that with other rental streams. I'm fine with that. So it's kind of this weird. I think it's like both ends of it from what you're talking about. But basically, I live there. Rentals covered my mortgage. My mortgage was zero, and the mortgage on that property was like $4,200 to $4,400 depending on the time. That's a lot of money that I was able to like get down to zero from 2 rentals.
Right.
That to me is the equivalent of, just like a really crazy stock. I didn't have to pay $50,000 a year. That alone replaced my first salary,
Yeah, but let's talk about the other thing too, right? When we talk about real estate, a lot of times in our platform or program, we talk about the three legs of the stool. So we've got what you just talked about is the cash flow, right? You basically zero that out, but you haven't talked about your tax savings and you haven't talked about the equity gain. How much equity do you have in that property now?
Oh, 500 to 600K, somewhere in there. And then after I get through this remodel, maybe like 600 or 700K.
That is life-changing money for most people in America. This property has been cash flowing from day one once it went operational, and I have over $1 million in equity in it now.
Whoa, $1 million? Mm-hmm. You're a millionaire off of one property?
Off one property. Now,
Wow.
Obviously people always say like, oh gosh, you guys were lucky. You guys bought at this time. You bought it. It's like, yes, correct. Absolutely. I'm not going to say that it was all skill, and it was absolutely timing and luck, but the opportunities are out there every day. It's there if you know what you're looking for and if you're putting in the work. And so I think a lot of times people, it's difficult to look 5-10 years into the future. Granted, I've been working on this property for 11 years, I guess technically 10 years, going on 11 years. So, but same thing for you. You bought your LA property when? Back in
2017.
2017?
Not even when it was like, dude, just by that logic, this is why it always frustrates me.
Yeah.
When someone says that, I'm like, okay, so by that logic, you're saying that anyone that has bought before you, like let's say right now it's February 10th, 2025, anyone that has bought before 2025 is lucky. People that bought in 1960, 1970, 1980, 90, 2000, 2000, everyone is just some crazy genius for getting in early, when in reality, most people became millionaires on accident.
But the thing is, that's crazy. And I don't think it's our listeners here that's listening to this right now. Maybe a couple, but if you do, I would challenge you to maybe change
let me invite you to my comments, my friends.
is that at the time, I'll tell you this, and I would like to hear what you said. I was the insane one in my group of friends to purchase this property in 2014, 2015. They thought I was absolutely nuts because I had to buy it cash. I emptied out my bank account to buy this piece of property and got started developing it. And so even at that time, everybody at that time would say like, oh, Kai's completely insane for doing this. And you know what? I just bought another property and I paid a good chunk of money for it inside the city. And people are saying the same thing. But I think if we fast forward 8 years from now, and I tell you that, hey, I have $1 million in equity in this one, it's been cash flowing me $80,000 a year, I think at that time people are like, oh, you were so lucky you were able to buy back in 2024 or 2025.
You know what I always say? I always say that every real estate investor is a genius 30 years from now.
It's true.
Like literally everyone is a genius. Everyone's like, whoa, you bought in so-and-so at that time? Wow, that's like everything, like literally anyone who buys, let's see, February 10th, 2025.
Yeah.
Anyone who buys from today to February 10th, 2026, if they hold on to whatever investment they buy, good, bad, ugly, great, doesn't matter. 30 years from now, I would say every single one of them will look like a genius if they stick it out and they like stay consistent with updating the property and stuff. I would say there might be one person that really got the universe's worst deal, but outside of that one person, anyone who buys today, 30 years from now, will look like a genius.
I agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. If you can hold on to your properties, I've sold a couple properties I wish I held on to. It's made me more money because I've moved that money into better properties or better businesses. But at the same time, I'm like, dang, I should have held on to those if I could. I just didn't have the cash, or I didn't have the liquidity at that time to hold on to them. But yes, I completely agree with you.
So let's get like a little strategy here, because we talked about the concept. I'm with it. I'm buying it. I agree with most of it, and I've done a lot of it. So with all that in mind, if someone wants to go and buy a life-changing property and actually get into something that's going to create, let's say, generational wealth through crazy forms of income, what is that blueprint, or what does that process look like? Is it, hey, buy a property and then just cram a bunch of rentals on there, or is it buy a property and split up your house into 10 houses? Like what's the secret?
Yeah, gosh, it's nuanced. But technically, you want to find a property what we call land and expand. So a lot of times when people find properties, they find something like, oh, it's 2 doors, it's a duplex, it's a triplex, it's a fourplex, and it's just kind of like you're buying at status quo, you're buying at a cap rate or a multiple, whatever it is, however you're buying them, however they're determining the market value, and then you're continuing moving forward with whatever you purchased. The best way of making money, both on the equity side, also with tax savings, but also with cash flow, is you land and expand. So what I mean by that, if you buy a place with 1 door, you create 2 doors. If you buy a place with 2 doors, you create 3 doors. If you buy a place with 3 doors, you can't expand to 4 doors, then you improve those 3 doors so you move yourself to another bracket of rent.
What do you mean by create? Like literally build something else?
Literally build or convert. So we just had a member who converted, I believe it was like a garage kind of shop area. They converted it into a secondary like guest house. So they just created a second door, conditioned square footage. So now let's just make an assumption that the conditioned square footage goes for $450 a square foot. They bought that shop or that barn for like $90 a square foot, right? So now what they did is they significantly increased their equity value. But now instead of just renting out the main home, I believe they're living in the main home. But now they can rent out the main home and they can rent out that second door too, to a separate family, to a separate person. So everything else stays fixed though. Your mortgage, your taxes probably fluctuate a little bit, but your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, all that stuff stays relatively fixed, right? But what happened is your income, your equity value just increased. It jumped significantly, hundreds of thousands, and probably tens of thousands of dollars a month in cash flows.
Because they added additional square footage or converted existing non-valuable square footage to valuable square footage.
So in terms to answer your question, it's really nuanced from person to person, financial situation, credit score, job stability, what they can get, all that stuff, financing, all that stuff. But when you're looking for property, what I would encourage you to do is look for that land and expand model where you can find something that you can establish, but you can grow and expand outward. I don't like properties where you're stuck and you can only rent out this one place and it's as is.
So really, what I did in LA wasn't really too off. Like it was build another income stream on there. That for me was a cash purchase. $72,000 is what it cost me to do, to build and all that stuff, the tiny house. In this instance, with your kind of person that you're citing here, they had an existing barn or outdoor area. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then was it just like a cash purchase or a cash renovation for them to convert it from a barn into a livable space?
You know what? I'm not sure if it was a cash. I know that he came into it with some money, but I believe it wasn't a cash thing and they purchased it with a down payment. They might have had like a secondary loan, like a renovation loan or something. Yeah. I'm not sure. I can ask Mike about it and see what he did. But another great example is what we talked about last week with Kat and Cho. Mm-hmm. So that's a great example. So what they did is instead of doing the land and expand and add more doors, what they did is they significantly improved that property. And if you guys go back and watch the last podcast with me and Rob, you'll see that, I don't know if we had before photos. If you guys stay tuned, keep watching my channel. I'm actually I'm driving out there this week on Wednesday to film it. But there's a bunch of before photos. They did it when they purchased it. It was producing $17,000 a year. They've been operating for 3 months.
Yeah.
They're projecting $120,000 to $140,000 in their first year.
What did they do to it? Like, how did they get it from 17,000 a year, not a month, 17,000 a year to 120 to 140K a year?
Yep. They focused on improvement. So when we're talking about this, it's not like long-term rentals where you add like a new dishwasher and you add a new refrigerator, new kitchen, laminate floors or whatever, and you can now bump up the rent by $500 a month or $200 a month.
Or convert a garage into a bedroom or something. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. In this case, you'll see that they built a whole story behind and an experience behind the cabin. Before it was just a door. It was an okay cabin, nothing crazy. But they built a whole experience. They had a very specific customer avatar. They knew exactly what they were doing, their intention behind it, and it draws in that customer base. So very similar to what you did, it brings in these people, and then all of a sudden, occupancy rates goes from 32, 33% to 80 to 90%. And instead of spending $100, $110 a night, people are willing to spend $275, $325 a night, right? And that's how you make an impact. So you can either make an impact in your portfolio either by expansion or significant improvement.
Now, is this a cash game? Because I feel like every time I love the strategy. I'm for it. Usually this is about the moment when the TikTokers and everybody's like, great, step one, have $1 million. So is this like a cash game? Because obviously if someone is going to buy a property, they got the down payment.
Yeah.
If you're talking about building a whole new house or structure, that's multiple six figures often. Is the thought, hey, yeah, wait and hang on for a bit, save money? Yeah. Is it a construction loan? Are you like hoping your rich uncle dies? Like, how does one even like finance a project like this? I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways, but what is kind of like, I don't want to say the path of least resistance, but what are common ways that people are doing this? Yeah,
I'll give you the more traditional way. And I'll give you some alternative ways that some of our members have done. The more traditional way is that you get a renovation loan or you get a construction loan where you put 20-25% down and you work with a GC or contractor who can actually build it out for you. It's by far the most expensive, but it's the easiest, most straightforward way traditionally. Okay. You're not going to make you will probably cash flow and you'll make some equity, but because you're paying a premium for obviously the interest rate and then obviously for the GC and the builder and the time and everything, it's just, it's how everything's done or how everything used to be done. The ideal situation is if there's already a structure or secondary structure there, like what we're talking about before, a barn, a beat up guest house, an old secondary home, anything like that, right? And then you can convert that into a space because the utilities are already there, the foundation is there, the structure is there itself, and you're basically doing a conversion rather than ground up construction. That's going to save you a ton of money. It's going to cost you significantly less than ground up. In order to do that, instead of getting like a construction loan, you could use a personal loan or a HELOC if you have your primary residence. That's another residence, like you're hopscotching, like we're talking about before. You use a HELOC.
You can borrow against your 401k. I know people have
borrow
done
against
that.
Your 401k, exactly. All of that because it's not going to be as expensive. If you're building something from the ground up, it's going to cost you $200,000. Doing a conversion like what we're just talking about as an example, let's just say rough math, it's going to cost you maybe $100,000. So about 50% the cost. Okay.
Far more achievable.
A lot more achievable. Now, the other ways, what people have been doing now is become more popular, is buying kit homes or buying prefab homes, right? And typically, it's still going to be around the same cost. Let's say it's about $100,000 to $150,000, depending how big and what finishes you have inside of it and all. But what happens is it shows up and it's done within 2 to 3 months. What's on site, it's done within like a weekend to 2 weeks. But where it really shines on the people that I found that gets the biggest bang for the buck, and this is what I would encourage for any 21, 22-year-old or anybody who's just starting off, is if you can learn to be handy and you do some of the work yourself, you will by far have the largest returns. And I know that you used to get your hands dirty too, especially with that ADU that you built in the backyard of the LA home, right?
That was mostly because I ran out of money. I had no choice.
There you go. Me too.
I literally had to wire the tiny house up, and I remember one day it exploded in my face. I called my dad. I was like, "Dad, it doesn't work anymore. Ya no trabaja." Yeah, it's so much cheaper in that little studio. It's kind of funny because I've remodeled it twice. But the studio under my house, I did all of it. I would get home from work at like 7 because I was in LA. I lived in Sherman Oaks. I would drive an hour from work back home. I'd give my wife a kiss. I would drive to Home Depot. I would get all my materials. I'd buy a bag of sour cream and onion ruffles and a Red Bull.
Those are good.
I would get my booty into that studio at 7 p.m. and I would not leave until 3 a.m. for months, for like, I don't know, 2 months, I think. It wasn't like that long, but it was long enough to age me. And, but like literally the moment it was done, I was making $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And those were the good old days. But
yeah.
It was DIY. It was borderline, it wasn't slumlord material, but it was enough for me to shut it down. After I had a tenant live in there for 3 years, I was like, hey, I just don't want anyone to live in there. They kind of made it gross, and deep cleanup, I was just like, I don't want to deal with it. Yeah. So I've since now paid the piper, and I paid about $20,000 to $25,000 to have that same space remodeled. It is beautiful now. Beautiful. Everything is new. Full kitchen. I added a washer dryer. I retiled the shower, which anytime you open up an old shower, you find things that are very expensive that you need to fix. Yep. And now that's going to open up again another $200 to $2,300 a month in long-term rental rents, not even short-term rental. So I drove the long-term rate from $1,700 a month to, we'll call it $2,000. So a $300 increase, but everything is new, no CapEx or maintenance. And I don't know. I mean, there are cheaper ways I could have done it, but now as soon as I rent that out, I just finished it not too long ago, and lots of stuff going on. But now I've opened up a $2,000 a month, not passive, but passive-ish income stream on my property. But I started with the DIY route.
How did that feel?
That's the moral of the story.
How did that feel when you're going through that process? And how old were you?
Let's see, it was 2017, so that was 7 years ago. So 28, 29.
29. Okay. And then you didn't have any construction experience before that?
No. I DIY'd like woodworking stuff, but I hadn't really renovated, and I felt on top of the world. Honestly, there was things I learned I could do and things I learned I couldn't do. Like I tiled this it was about 4 feet by 5 feet, like a 20 square foot section. Took me about 8 hours, and it should take any tile person like 20 minutes. So the next day I went to Home Depot and found Rodrigo. And he came in and he literally laughed at it. He was like, who did that? I was like, me. He goes, you did that? I was like, yeah. He goes, you did that? And I was like, yes. And then he started laughing. He goes, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And then he like knocked it out in a day, like the rest of the apartment in a day for like, I don't know, $500 or something. And I was like,
oh, wow.
It was the first time I realized, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, just pay people that are faster than you at the things that you can't do.
Yeah. No, you bring up a really good point though, man. I love that. I love hearing people's origin stories. It's like kind of like a villain arc when you have to decide you have to pick up the hammer and do it yourself. My friends and I, we all have that story. We all had to start somewhere. And usually it comes from like exactly what you said. It was, we don't have the money to pay other people, so we had to learn it ourselves. And I wish it was something that was taught more in school today, or was more acceptable to have that grit to DIY. I think everybody's like, okay, by the time I hire this person, I do this and I buy this property, I'm going to be losing $5,000 a month. I was like, okay, so what? So you either do nothing or you pick up the hammer and you pick up a book or you pick up a laptop and you start watching YouTube and figure out how to do it. But that's how we all started. I mean, I remember my friends and I, that's how we started. We just started experimenting and started tearing stuff apart and kind of learning along the way. And then hopefully we had a little bit of money. If we had to do like what you did, we have somebody hire a friend or somebody who come out and can help us fix the situation. And then we learn it and we do it again. Yeah. In the beginning though, man, if people, did I say this? I think my last video that I just released, the people that I've known for the last 15 to 20 years, the ones who are by far who are the most successful are the ones who learn their business or their trade from the ground up. And so whether, I don't care whatever business it is, it could be like, I don't know, a YouTube business, creation business. It's running, we have actually a friend that runs like this metal fabrication company, and he is the CEO, but he can do every job all the way up. And I believe it's made him a more successful entrepreneur. He actually just recently sold his business for $50 million. And he's
no big deal.
No big deal.
deal.
But yeah, when it comes to real estate though, if you don't have the money to do it, I'd say like learn the basics. Go into the home. If you don't know how to tile, watch a YouTube video, do it right. Go to Home Depot. Home Depot has free classes, guys. If you guys don't know that, Home Depot has free classes on framing, tiling, all this crazy stuff. Okay. And then try it out yourself. And when you, in real estate, when you do that stuff like this, you guys, I know you guys, the angle's not very wide here. When you build out a property yourself, just to give you a little bit of perspective, when I didn't have a ton of money and I built this out for $18,000, like everything in here, the flooring, the ceiling, the drywall, everything is $18,000. Okay. It was immediately worth over $300,000 when I was done and I got my permits. So think about that. $18,000. Don't get it wrong. It took my soul. Okay. Yeah. It took like exactly what you said, like working all day and then coming here and then working on it. But
it made you $282,000.
And the cash flows every single month.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, I told my story as a way to say I've remodeled it twice, but as investors, we have to start with our hands dirty because we oftentimes don't have money most of the time.
Yeah.
And then you earn your stripes and you earn your stars. Your stripes. You stripes and stars. Okay. You earn your stripes. You do your thing. You make money. You build a little bit of cash flow and net worth, and then you can afford to hire it out. And this last time, I hired it out. And now
Yeah.
I hire everything out. But for anybody watching this video, go look down below this video. You'll see my logo, and it's the Rob Built logo is an R with the hammer in it. That is like this channel started out as a DIY channel. It actually wasn't real estate.
Yeah.
And now I don't really do DIY anymore, which, yeah, maybe I will. Maybe one day again. But we all have to start somewhere. And I think it is nice to do one project on your own, because then you can kind of tell when your contractors are BSing you.
That's true. You learn in the process. I still personally love it. I was talking to you on the phone yesterday. I was telling you, I'm still out there digging trenches and putting stuff in. I actually generally enjoy it.
I do. I think I'm too like, I don't know. I think I'm too anxious. I don't particularly suffer from anxiety like on a, like I don't have to take medication for it or anything, but I'm ADHD. Yeah, you know this. I also don't take medication for that, but
you do or you don't?
I don't. I
okay,
should.
Good.
But
I think ADHD is a superpower. I have ADHD like crazy too.
Yeah. And you know me, I'm always like, dude, let's do this. And I'm like, I got like 20 ideas, but I think, I feel like I'm constantly being crushed by everything. And like, I can't do anything at a leisurely pace without feeling like pure destruction is happening in my life. Thank you, Doc. I've been having weird dreams. So basically like doing DIY stuff now, like if I'm like this, I did this whole studio right here. I did this all by myself. Actually,
you copied my studio. It looks good.
Yeah, that's what you said. I didn't know you had your studio that looked strikingly
that
similar.
color looks awfully similar to the color of my studio too.
Enough. Actually, I did hire a painter though. I will say that. But everything else I put up and constructed. And that whole time it was fun, but I was like, oh, what's happening? Like, what am I missing out on? What money am I not making in my businesses? Who am I failing on my team? Which kid am I neglecting? And that is how I always feel when I do anything that I know I can hire out for like $100, you know?
Right.
And so maybe that's like, I can't say it's a mature, someone might hear that and say, oh, it's because you're a mature CEO and you value your time. And it's like, nope, it's like literally a mental thing where I'm like, oh, everything is wrong. I need to be everywhere at once. And it's like hard for me to do DIY now. But I think I would like to, because I think if I did, that means if you ever see me, okay, I'll do this because I feel like I'm going on a tangent. But if you ever see me DIYing again, you can look at that video and be like, Rob figured it out.
Fair enough.
He's happy again.
I think because I echo a lot of the feelings and emotions that you go through, because I very, very similar. I have like, at any given moment in time, there's probably 15 to 20 things racing through my mind that are all urgent and important. But I think I like construction. So I train jujitsu too. And I think similar to jujitsu or surfing is when I'm digging a trench, nothing else really matters. It just clears my mind because it's a mental thing. I have to think about where I'm going to put the trench, where I'm going to put the conduit, how I'm going to lay it down and then bury it. And then how do I put it next to where's the access panel, all that little stuff. And I think for me, it's more therapeutic because me digging a trench is a lot simpler in a lot of ways than me trying to run these businesses or doing these meetings, jumping on calls, doing podcasts. As fun as everything is, but when it comes at you all at once, dude, it's suffocating. But
yeah, I don't feel that way when I'm doing content. Hey, I don't feel that way right now, my friend. I feel like we're actually changing lives right now.
And that's therapy with Kai and Rob.
That's right. Okay, well, there were other rabbit holes we had planned for this podcast, but I think that just means that we'll just do it on the next one.
Okay.
Why don't we say this? Why don't we tell everybody this?
Yeah.
If you're interested in this idea of development, of making money multiple ways on a single piece of property, if you're like, hey, how do I want to make money off of 5 doors on one property. I want to do the land hacking thing, glamping. I want to grow bamboo on my property and sell it for $18,000.
I don't recommend it, by the way. I don't recommend it.
He's on the record. If you fit that box anywhere, something that's kind of a new announcement. We talked about this on the last video, but I'm going to say it again. Kai and I have actually, we've joined forces. We've partnered up. Kai is officially the co-owner of HostCamp. And so now our whole entire program, HostCamp for a long time was a Airbnb focused program, and we've changed the curriculum. And we've changed the curriculum to be focused on development, new construction, multiple streams of income, and how it all marries with the world of Airbnb. Did I miss anything there? Is that a pretty good encapsulation of what HostCamp now is?
Yeah, you get to work directly with Rob and I. You get to meet our team, who consists of coaches who on through our program. They're investors, they're successful investors. and real estate builders. I'm trying to think. I know Cam's done a lot of his own work. Robert's been a builder. He's done I don't think you know this. Robert, he's built a couple dozen custom homes in Austin, actually. So, and obviously, Lindsay's a freaking rock star. So, but yeah, you get to work directly with us and being part of a community if this is something that you're really interested in terms of investing in what I consider alternative real estate. Yeah, I mean, it's a free call. Set up a free call with us and our team. You'll probably end up talking to me or Dom, and we can see if it's a good fit for you. If not, we can part as friends. Otherwise, welcome to the community, and let's get started.
For sure. Yeah, so we'll leave a link in the description down below. By the way, our amount of students, like we have, I want to say like 4,000 total students,
Like
thousands of Airbnbs all over the world that we launched in the host camp cumulatively. So we're the real deal. We're very, very good at this Airbnb thing, and we want to show you. So click that link down below. That's going to be today's podcast. We actually did a whole podcast last week that we alluded to. It's called The Onion Strategy, and we really dissect that. If you want to check out that podcast, that was 1 hour of just pure knowledge and value, 100% for free, because that's what we do here on the Raw Built channel. Please go watch that. You can click right here to watch it. It is my favorite piece of content that I've put out in a long time. So click that after you like and subscribe right here. All right, catch you guys on the next episode of Raw Built.
Bye.
Bye.